Hi dear one, sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Instagram was having a hard time getting started today, so I apologize about that. My name is Sarah Lustig and I am a soul harmony guide and a spiritual activator. And what that means is I help women tap into their innate power, tap into their innate energy, raise their vibration by becoming and embodying their authentic self. So being able to let go of the conditioning from society and really embody who you are at your true essence and at who you are at your true core. So coming home to that precious part of you, that divine part of you. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my spiritual journey and how I got started and some of the most important kind of tools and resources that have been a part of my journey. Some of the most important teachings that have been a part of my experience, and I'm going to talk to you about those today and pass that wisdom on to you to help with your journey and the challenges that you may be facing in your life currently. So for those of you who don't know, I am a licensed therapist currently, and I also do spiritual coaching. I have been a licensed therapist for over 5 years now, but that work wasn't really fulfilling and wasn't really, I loved that work, but I just felt like I was in a box and I wasn't really able to show up as my full expression of self. And so in that way, I wanted more of me. But today I want to talk about my spiritual journey, which really started much longer ago. Back when I was growing up, I experienced a lot of trauma. Growing up in my childhood, it was very dysfunctional. There was a lot of chaos and conflict and a lot of physical abuse, verbal abuse, manipulation. Is bad. Really enmeshed emotions, enmeshed boundary or no boundaries at all, just completely enmeshed with family. Family, parents using each other against each other, just really toxic dynamics, really dysfunctional dynamics that were really challenging to grow up in and deeply affected me growing up and created a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. My relationship with my mother in particular was very challenging and very tumultuous and very full of conflict for many, many, many years. And my mom ultimately died when I was 18. She died from complications of a drug overdose. And so not only was, her death at my age 18 very traumatic, but then also the way that she died was very traumatic as well. So it was a very complicated and, challenging dynamic situation. There were many, many, many layers. And her death also brought up a lot of the trauma that I had been trying to, hold down and bury underneath and avoid and pretend wasn't really there. And when that death happened and when it really just blew all of the trauma up in my life. So I would say really my spiritual journey started at that point when I was 18 and that experience happened, because when my mom died, when that happened, who I was at that point in my life also died with her. That version of me, who I was, died. And I was gone, and that version of me no longer existed. It's like it crumbled into a bajillion pieces, shattered into a bajillion pieces, and was never ever going to be made whole again in the same way that it was before. But the beauty and the power of the spiritual journey, and I'll talk more about this, is that we get to constantly be making new, and we get to constantly be creating new. And we get to constantly be in co-creation with the universe. But I didn't know that or understand that at the time. And so who I was at that point in my life, I died. And I really went through a deep and profound spiritual death of that version of me. That was not easy, and it was incredibly painful. Not only was I losing my mom, but I was losing this foundation in which I understood life around, and I was losing my complete sense of identity. So everything in my life was crumbling at once. I would say I didn't handle that very well at first. I mean, many 18-year-olds, sorry, my cat is meowing in the background. Many 18-year-olds don't handle life well in particular, but with all of those things going on, it made it very, very, very complicated to try to handle anything in life remotely well. I left for college within 2 weeks of my mom passing away, and so it was like that happened, and then college started, and I went to college out of state. And so I went to college away from my family, away from all of my friends, away from where I had lived for the past 16 years of my life. So it was a lot of change and a lot of transition that first year after my mom passed away. And I was really just going through the motions. I was really numb, and I was really shut down, and I was really having trouble just functioning in life at all on any level, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It was a really, really rough time in my life, and I was in pain and suffering for many years, anxiety and depression and trouble sleeping and nightmares and reliving, and ultimately being diagnosed with PTSD. So what that started was a journey of questioning, like, what to do with all of this, what to do with myself, and also like how to move on from this, but also like what does happen after we die. Like, that was really the first significant death in my life, and it brought up all of these questions about like what does come after this. And in trying to find peace about what happened and losing my mom in the traumatic way in which she did pass away. And at the time there were, the details weren't completely known, and we weren't sure. We didn't find out things until later. And so being on this kind of quest to understand like what happened to me and how to make sense of it and how to go forward in life without being a completely broken mess all day, every day. It took me a while. It took me a couple of years to get through the initial shock and trauma and numbing that I was doing. It wasn't until I was probably about 2021, that somebody I knew gave me a book. And that book would be the catalyst for my really like jumping into my spiritual journey and really connecting with this world of spirituality. And so that book was Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. And essentially, Dr. Michael Newton is a hypnotherapist who was working with his clients, just doing kind of regular hypnotherapy work. And he started to recognize that he was putting them in a state where they were going into a regressive state. And regression means to go backwards. We can regress back into an earlier age, like our 5-year-old self or our 7-year-old self. But we can also regress back to past lives. And this is where like people do past life readings. So he was doing past life regression without totally understanding that at first, and then starting to piece it together as he was working with his clients. And over the years, he interviewed hundreds of different people, and they all started having very, very similar things to say and very similar details of the spirit world and what comes after death and our purpose as souls on earth and what we come here to do and our guides and all of these different incredible things. Well, at the time, it was a lot to take in, all of that information. And there was a part of me that didn't totally believe it and wasn't totally sure about it. But there was another part of me, much bigger part of me, that needed comfort and peace and needed something that made me feel like it was okay. And that book gave me the answers and gave me the foundation to feel like, okay, this could be a possibility. And so I actually kind of had this conversation and this discussion with myself where I like came to this place of like, even if this isn't true, even if this is totally make-believe and if it's totally fake, I'm going to choose to believe it. And I'm going to choose to buy into this idea, because it does give me a sense of safety and it does give me a sense of comfort and it does make me feel like there is a reason and a purpose to all of this. And that is something I desperately needed at the time in order to keep going. And I'm really glad that I looked at it that way, because it really did allow me to start to live in this expanded world and start to see outside of the life that I had always known and the pain that I had always known and the suffering that I had always known. And it allowed me to see that maybe there was a reason that I had gone through all of those things, and that perhaps I could actually use my experiences to help other people. And there's a great Maya Angelou quote that I also read growing up, that I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And so that quote really gave me permission to not be less than because of the things that I experienced in my life, not the the traumas that I experienced, but to really understand that my soul had planned those things. My soul had decided that I would go through certain experiences in order to have certain medicine and hold certain profound wisdoms that would be so important for me in my life and important for the work that I was going to do in the world. And so really understanding, starting to understand like my role in all of the world and what I was really here to do made sense with the pain that I had experienced. And it gave me a way to, like, a fresh perspective to see the trauma that I had experienced and understand that it was preparing me for something greater. Understanding that, now I know that I'm here to walk a life of mastery, and that the life of mastery is generally a pretty challenging life, because we're here to learn how to be a master and how to walk this very nuanced line and really be aligned with our intuition, with our soul, with our heart, with our body, with our mind, all of those pieces working in harmony together. But at the time, I didn't understand that. So that book really allowed my world to open up a little bit more and allowed me to move into this world that was so much more welcoming and so much more loving than the world that I had been used to and the world I grew up in. And I really started to be able to see myself differently because of that. And so I went to grad school to become a therapist. And for the longest time, I didn't go to grad school to become a therapist. I went to grad school to understand like psychology and human behavior, so I could understand like what the fuck happened to me in my life and what all of that was about. And so as I was, in undergrad and grad school in psychology classes and working through, attachment theory and somatic exercises and all the different things, emotional intelligence and stages of development, right? Understanding how trauma impacts us at different ages, different traumas, and how they impact us, and how different people are impacted by different traumas, and understanding resiliency, right? And really studying this very much on a mental level and very much on a human level, in order to prepare me for being able to do this on a much grander level and being able to do it on a soul level and working in kind of shamanic and medicine realms and being able to do much, much deeper kind of soul therapy work, if you will, and soul healing work and soul freeing liberation work. And so that step of going to grad school and doing that work was really important in my life, to be able to understand myself better and to be able to kind of have this solid foundation of how are other people going to come to me and what language are they going to use and what are they going to understand too, and how can I support them from that way and from that perspective that they're used to, while also being able to bring in this much grander wisdom of the soul. And so really my spiritual journey started even before I was born, and doing life planning for this life and understanding the experiences that I wanted to have as a soul in this life, and understanding the work that I came on earth to do, and understanding the frequency that I came on earth to hold. And this is part of what I would say is like some of the most profound and important like teachings that I've experienced in my own journey. And what I would say is the most profound part is like really understanding like my own particular unique role on earth and my purpose and what I came here for. And having that understanding really freed me from the childhood that I had and freed me from the suffering that I held on to for so long. because I felt like I didn't know who I would be without that suffering, and I didn't know who I would be without those stories and those experiences. But now that I understand my larger purpose in the world and in the universe, even beyond the earth, then life is so much easier, and there's a lot more detachment in life, and an appropriate, healthy level of detachment where I don't have to hold so tightly to life, and I don't have to hold so tightly to the people around me or to the situations around me, when I can let things go and I can, sit back and relax and allow life to really flow the way that life is meant to, without feeling like I have to hold onto these reins really tightly. And that's generally what trauma makes us do, is like, need to hold on because we are seeking safety, and we are trying to not be abandoned and not be rejected and not be disconnected from others. But understanding on our spiritual journey, like, we are never disconnected, we are always connected. And I would say that's another one of the really big, important lessons on my spiritual journey, is really understanding that we are all connected. We are all connected to each other, and we are all connected through source. There is one creative ultimate source in the universe that creates all of this, and we are always, always, always connected to that consciousness, to that creative source in the universe. And so understanding that while we are all connected to that divine creator, we all are also unique. And we all came here to have completely unique experiences. We are here to have experiences so that the creator can be living through us and through those experiences. And so the more experience we have, the more creation gets to learn, and the faster creation learns. And so the goal is not to be perfect. It's not to show up perfect every single day. The goal is to have as many heart-centered and heart-fueled and passion-fueled experiences in your life, so that the creator can be living through you and experiencing through you, through all the things that you are doing throughout your day. And understanding that each one of those things is sacred. Nothing is less sacred or more sacred than the other. Drinking water, taking a shower, going for a walk, spending time with our friends, spending time by ourselves, cooking, eating, going to the bathroom. Those are all equally sacred experiences. And the more we actually awaken to the truth of that, the more alive life feels, and the more divine everything becomes. It already is that way. The more aware of that divinity that exists within everything, that is constantly buzzing within all of us, you become aware of that, and then you are able to tap into that. So being able to understand this connection to all, and being able to see the divine in every single person you come across, and every single being you come across, which includes birds and insects and mammals and felines, and all sorts of living beings. We are all connected to them through the web of life, and yet we are all unique, and we all come to have our own unique experiences and fully experience that unique perspective, knowing that you will never be this version of you ever again in this time, and all of this playing out exactly how it's unfolding, and the magic of that, and the wisdom that's gained in that. And so that's definitely been one of my most important spiritual lessons. Another one I would say is seeing every person that we meet to be a teacher, and looking at every person that we come across as a teacher with wisdom to share. And sometimes that wisdom is who we want to be or how we want to be in the world, right? We see people who embody the kind of characteristics that we want to be like. We see people who maybe are more confident than you feel, or people who are living out their soul purpose in a way that you want to be able to, right? And so we see those kinds of people, and we can look at them as teachers to be able to tap into their medicine and reflect back on how we can then carry that medicine in our unique way, the way that our soul is meant to carry that medicine. Sometimes people are also here to teach us how we don't want to be, and who we don't want to be, and how we don't want to show up in the world. And I would say, like, for most of my childhood, that was a lot of what my parents taught me. They taught me how I didn't want to be in the world, who I didn't want to be, how I didn't want to behave, how I didn't want to communicate, how I didn't want to act, how I did not want to show up in the world. And that was painful teaching at times, but it was also very powerful and helpful teaching at times, to recognize the harshness and to be able to be the softness instead, and to be able to see that to be soft and to be sensitive is a strength and not a weakness, right? And so being able to look at my parents, for example, as teachers, helped me detach from seeing them as perpetrators and seeing them as abusers. Not to say that they aren't those things too, because I'm not here to gaslight myself, and I'm not here to gaslight other people who've had experiences of trauma. Like, we can hold both truths of our parents are teachers and our parents perpetrated and abused, right? Those can be two truths that we hold at the same time. For me, however, being able to see my parents as teachers allowed me to have a healthy level of detachment and no longer personalize the pain and the abuse that I experienced at their hands, no longer personalize the suffering that they created in my life, and allowed me to free myself from it. And meant that I didn't have to hold on to that, and I also didn't have to have loyalty to those relationships that were not kind, loving, supportive, compassionate, graceful for me at all. And so it gave me the permission to actually separate myself from my dad as I got older, recognizing that this isn't a healthy relationship for me to have, and it is absolutely okay, and in fact crucial to my health, to my happiness, to have very strong and rigid boundaries with him. And knowing that that was perfectly okay, and that that was actually really important for me to set for my own freedom, for my own health, and to be able to really show up in the world in the way that I need to be able to show up in the world, in the way that is really important for me to be able to show up. And so again, being able to hold two truths, right? I can love my dad, and I do love my dad deeply. I really do. I want the best for him, and I wish him well every single day. And I also understand that he is a dynamic human, a dynamic soul, with his own soul mission and his own soul lessons to learn, that he didn't always show up in the way that I needed. And he hasn't always been the father that my soul, my human self, my heart have needed in this life. And so we can hold many truths at once. And that's part of this work, is being able to expand our capacity to hold truths. And to know that my dad is not ultimately a bad person because he created harm for me. My dad is his own wounded person with his own pains and sufferings that are unhealed and festering, right? And when wounds fester, they show up in our relationships with others, which is why it is important to have those boundaries from people who are not willing to reflect and change and hear how they impact us and do things differently. And so understanding that, seeing my dad as a teacher allowed me to really have a healthy level of detachment for him and see him as his own wounded person, without needing him to show up as the father that I had hoped he would be. And so it also really frees us from our expectations of people when we can actually just accept them as the wounded people they are, without feeling like we have to fix them, without feeling like we have to make things better for them or alleviate their pain or suffering, because that is not our responsibility at all. And in fact, when we do that, we take away their ability to do it for themselves. And in a sense, we enable their wounded behavior, and we allow them to continue to show up in that wounded way. And in that way, we are participating in the wounding, and we're participating in ourselves continuing to get wounded and their wounding continuing. So yes, it's important to have these conversations and let people know in our lives what's going on. But if they are not receptive and they continue to act in the same ways, we also have to let them go, right? And have those boundaries that are appropriate, and see them on terms that feel good for us, and see them on terms that don't leave us feeling depleted and and empty, but leave us feeling like we are still empowered and we are still showing up in a way that feels good and whole and in integrity. Sorry, I was trying to say in integrity and in authenticity at the same time. So in integrity and in authenticity. So being able to really separate from the people who harm us and not be loyal to the people who harm us, and understand for myself that I also couldn't go to the kind of abusers in my life for healing and for love. Like, they're just not capable. It's not that they're bad people, they're just not capable of holding those roles for me in my life. And so being able to detach and see them as teachers also really helped me embody more of my power, more of my full essence and my inner authority to really be able to show up as the hero in my own life, and to be able to embody that sovereign queen who isn't dragged down by other people and held back by other people, held back by their expectations or their projections of me, right? Knowing that everybody comes to their life with their own set of experiences and their own set of beliefs, and not everybody is capable of hearing us and matching us. And something that's really helped me on my journey is recognizing and being able to discern, like, who is at a level to be able to meet and match me and reciprocate with me, and who is simply not. And again, not because they're bad people, it's just simply because they don't have the capacity that I have. We're not equal in that sense. We're not compatible in that sense. But again, coming back to that teaching earlier, that we all are equal. There is no hierarchy. There is no better or worse. There is no more advanced than anybody else. Spirit sees us all completely equal, not on any kind of pedestal, right? Even our guides are not better than us. They are not higher than us. They are a different expression, and we are a different expression of them. No better or worse or less than, no good or bad, right? Those are very human terms that we reduce things to, just to make them easier for us to understand. So just want to make that side note. But I also want to talk about what are the tools that have been most important on my spiritual journey. For me, that has been somatic movement. And what somatic movement is being able to move our bodies in ways that are intentional and in ways that are very therapeutic, in ways that are healing, intentionally healing. And somatic movement, there's a variety of different things that might look like. It might look like doing yoga that's slow flow or restorative. It might look like doing qigong or tai chi exercises. It might look like doing, trauma-based yoga, right? So it's, trauma-based yoga is very different than regular yoga. And so just being very mindful of how the body stores trauma and how the body holds trauma and how we use touch in yoga. Somatic movement might be different dance exercises like belly dancing or even like pole dancing, right? Women who've experienced sexual assault, if they have that kind of wound, then being able to like do something like pole dancing or belly dancing can be really empowering, to be able to reclaim that power and to be able to say, like, I will not be reduced by this, and I will be able to still show up in a way that feels safe and empowering for me. And so finding whatever somatic movement might be the most empowering for you, and finding how your body likes to move and how your body needs to move in order to work through trauma, in order to release trauma. And understanding that our bodies, not just our bodies store trauma, but our mind stores trauma, our heart stores trauma, our energy field stores trauma. And so being able to heal at all of these different levels, cognitively, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, right? All of these different ways in which we need in order to fully integrate healing in, and to be able to come to a fully integrated place of harmony. And so somatic movement is a beautiful way to get there so often. And this is one of the things that, meant or was the reason why I left therapy, is because therapy is really just talking, and it's talking about things, but it's not actually getting to the root of it because it's missing so many other factors. And so somatic movement is part of getting to that root of like where it lives in the body, and being able to free the body from it so that we can heal the other aspects of it and release it in all the other layers and levels energetically and so on. So that was one of the most powerful tools that I really found on my journey to being able to really heal, not just from the things I experienced in this life, but also from the kind of soul wounds and karmic wounds that I was carrying, not just from my own past lives, but from my ancestors' past lives and from the lineage that I was born into, from all of their lives. And so, not everybody's operating on such a level, but that's my level, my journey. And so, being able to understand on all of these different layers what was going on and being able to target them on all of those different ways. Another really powerful modality in being able to do that was and is art making and creative expression and play. Creative expression is so very profoundly important for healing from trauma, for healing from anything in our lives, for doing soul work, because art and play tap into our unconscious, and that's where our soul stuff lives, and that's where our previous lifetime wounds live. It doesn't live in the conscious, because if it lived in the conscious, it would be too overwhelming for us. It can only be brought to the conscious when we've created safety enough in the body, and again, that's why the body is so important, in order to be able to tap into those higher realms of wisdom, right? If we try to tap into our third eye chakra and open our crown chakra before we've really rooted safety into the body, we can have some really challenging effects. And this is why, sometimes people, when they're on their spiritual journey, they really are suffering and struggling because they've gone to trying to open up their third eye chakra before they have created safety and rooted and grounded into their bodies. It's really dangerous to do that. So we want to be mindful of how we're working with the body and how we are tapping into the soul's wisdom. But creative artistic expression is one of the most powerful and profound ways that we do that. And so what does that really mean even? That can mean drawing or painting. It can mean writing, like writing poetry, writing short stories. It can mean stream of consciousness writing, where you're not thinking at all. You're just letting the pen move and you're just writing all the words down as quickly as possible as they come into your mind, and you're letting yourself flow. And then going back and being able to read that and look at what came out of that and what were some of the things that stood out to you, being able to circle things or underline things, being able to see where there's limiting beliefs or where there's unconscious beliefs that are holding you back, or being able to see the patterns of your wounds showing up. So that is one way. It might be, and I think a very powerful way in particular for women is voice. And so being able to sing. Healing our vagus nerve is a really, really important part of healing from trauma. And I could talk a lot about that. It's a whole other subject, but healing our vagus nerve is really important, and our vagus nerve is very much connected to our voice. And so singing and humming are powerful ways in which we can connect to and heal our soul and connect to our soul's wisdom and connect to the voice of our soul. When we're singing, we're able to tap into much more divine realms and activate different parts of ourselves. And so being able to tap into your own voice. And it's not about singing good. It's not about like going on The Voice or anything like that. It's about just hearing yourself. It's about expressing yourself and being able to allow yourself and your expression to flow. So often our words, especially as women, right, like we're biting our tongue, we're holding our words back, we're trying to be nice and kind and sweet and polite and loving and compassionate and graceful all day long, that we're not always saying what's on our mind, and we're not always saying how we feel because we feel like it's too mean or we don't want to hurt people, and so we're like holding back constantly, which is really, really unhealthy for us. And we need to be able to allow that expression to fully and freely flow. So being able to let your voice be heard and being able to know that your words are important and your words have such a meaning on the planet, and your words hold a vibration that is unique to you, right? Like nobody has the same voice. Nobody in the entire world has the same voice, because your voice box is unique to you. That's amazing, right? And so when we tap into our own voice, like we're really tapping into our soul on a very deep and profound level. So being able to tap into your own expression of creativity and your own expression of art making, whatever that might be for you, whether it's singing or writing, whether it's like cooking or baking and how you put meals together, right? That's a very creative expression. Or sewing or gardening even, right? Or maybe you like to make candles or make, essential oil blends or tinctures, right? Like there's so many ways to express your creativity and your creative nature and to play around, right? Like let's say you like to make tinctures, being able to work with different plants or different essential oils and different scents and being able to pair them together, right? And having fun with that and playfulness, right? Like the more I invited playfulness into my life, the more life felt easy, right? The more like lighthearted life felt. And that is also a really important way that I was able to heal my inner child and start to give myself the childhood that I didn't have, is by like letting that version of me play. And I didn't always have like a playful, free childhood. Like that wasn't what I grew up in. I grew up in like always having to be good and always having to behave and always having to get good grades and always being quiet and never like pissing my parents off, right? Especially my dad. And so that self-expression was so muted for so long. And so being able to tap into this kind of creative play and using my voice in different powerful ways really allowed me to heal so much more quickly than just like talk therapy. And because I had been in therapy for like a decade trying to heal things myself and just wasn't making any traction until I started finding some of these practices. The other most important and most profound thing on my own spiritual journey and my own spiritual awakening was to be very, very intentional about cutting out anything that lowered my vibration. So anything that makes me feel dense, that makes me feel heavy, right? That makes me feel blah, that makes me feel stuck and stagnant, that holds me back, right? I don't surround myself with any of those things anymore. Instead, I now invest my time and energy into things that are good for my vibration and things that expand my heart and help create more safety in my life and help empower me. I invest in relationships that empower me and people that empower me, and I invest in hobbies and activities that empower me, and I spend my time doing things that light me up, that make me feel good, that make me feel happy and joyful, right? And cutting out processed foods and cutting out alcohol and cutting out caffeine that made me feel anxious and jittery and, right, like not calm and not centered at all in my body, very disconnected, right? Cutting out things that made me feel just shitty, right? Like friendships that made me feel bad, or people that like I felt like were just tolerating me and didn't actually like want to be around me and didn't like love my company, right? But just feel like, yeah, I guess it's fine if Sarah comes. Like, I don't want to be around anybody who feels that way about me. And I only want to be around people that I'm like, yes, I love hanging out with that person. I love spending time with them. And I want people to feel the same way about spending time with me, right? And so being able to invest in those kind of relationships and invest in people that see me and get me and understand me and value me, even if they don't understand me, right? But still want to and value who I am as a person. And knowing that that is what you deserve as well. And so being able to invest in things that really restore your harmony, restore your life force energy, things like fresh fruit that is non-GMO and is organic, things that are grown locally and in your community, different community offerings. Like for myself, there's a couple different companies around that make different tinctures that I absolutely love, and they're local to Asheville. And I love being able to support other women-owned businesses in my community that way. And so being able to find things like that raise your vibration and put you back into, the true essence of your own soul and connecting back with yourself, investing more in those things and surrounding yourself in things that make you feel good, that make you feel centered, make you feel happy. So those have been some of the most important teachings and some of the most important tools on my own spiritual journey. and my own journey to becoming my true self, becoming my most authentic and empowered self, so that I can show up as the guide to help you become your most authentic and empowered self, and showing up in the world in a way that feels really good to you, and showing up in the world in a way that feels really nourishing to you, not in a way that feels forceful or like you like pressured, in a way that feels like you have to put a lot of effort in. Like, it's not the way, that's the old way, right? That's kind of the more masculine energy that we're moving away from. And so if you would like to come into more harmony with yourself, if you would like to come into more harmony with your life and the relationships that you have and the people in your life, and if you'd like to come into more harmony with source and the divine and spirituality and feeling more nourished by this relationship. And one last thing that I'll add is, like, for me, recognizing that I'm never alone on this journey has been so profoundly healing. And just to remember how loved I am and how supported I am in the universe, and that the universe really is looking out for me and deeply cherishes me as it deeply cherishes you and deeply adores you and wants you to thrive. It really, really does. But you also have to be willing to open that door and invite spirit in to allow that to take place and to really receive that guidance from your own soul, from your own heart. So if you would like to learn how to do that, and if you would like to be able to do that with more ease and with more joy, then I invite you to reach out to me. You can DM me, or you can follow the link in my bio to learn more about my one-on-one offerings. I will also be relaunching my group container, probably in February sometime. I don't know have the exact dates, but sometime in February. And then we'll start in March. So if you're interested in that, send me a DM and we can talk more about that as well. If you have any more questions about me or my spiritual journey or spirituality in general, any topic about spirituality, whether it's energy healing or plant medicine or soul healing, and how we heal on these different levels, how we work through anxiety and depression on a human level and a soul level, how we grieve on all of these different levels, how we work through karmic wounds and past life traumas and all of those different things, right? If you have any questions about spirituality, working with your guides, I'm happy to answer them. Send me a message. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful night. Thank you so much for all who joined, and I hope you are just so blessed this year. I hope this year brings you so many wonderful opportunities for you to show up even more as your most marvelous and most authentic self. Thanks, beauties.